Then move across the Channel and into southern England and Wales. In the West Country there is a different style altogether. There is also a much longer history of macro-scale production of hard cider, alongside a smaller and almost lost craft cider industry. So English craft cider is focused on a pile of bittersweet fruit, all low acid and phenolic, literally piles and piles of it made by tractors. And this cider is often served at ambient temperature or cellar temperature, also known as straight from the barn. In addition to a tepid temperature, the cider is consumed flat, without carbonation of any sort. English macro cider, on the other hand, is served cold, on draft, and sparkling. The more mass-marketed ciders are sweetened, often brightly acidic, and a light golden hue. Then we come to American cider, made first by English colonialists after trees had been brought over, as there were no harvestable cider apples in North America. I have created a homework assignment that involves reading this wonderful article about John Chapman, also known as Johnny Appleseed, and there's a few questions to spur your minds on, to think a little bit about who he was and what he did. So I would like to assume that you have all read about John Chapman. And cider in the United States was the first alcohol that Europeans produced, before the sugar trade made rum openly available, and before the Bavarian immigrants brought their power of beer. Europeans harvested apples and pressed cider. Without refrigeration, the cider was sweet for a matter of days before it began to ferment from the wild yeast that lives on everything. Without doing a thing, juice becomes cider, and then cider becomes vinegar. The more you learn, the more you can control these steps and keep what you like, make vinegar out of the rest, and vinegar is incredibly healthy and delightful to consume. Cider never goes bad. Early colonialists up to the 1880s, I believe, consumed primarily cider. It was safer than water. It was tasty when diluted with water for the children, and still proved to be safer in terms of dysentery and other waterborne pathogens. So, if you wanted your babies to survive, you gave them cider instead of water. And if you were the only one that had access to an orchard, as Europeans moved their colonies west, you were often the healthiest family, as well as the wealthiest. In conjunction with the 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, a wave of German immigrants moved into the Midwest and the northeast of what is now the United States and Canada. The knowledgeable immigrants planted the barley, malted it, and were very successful at making beer in close proximity to urban areas, and the transition began from cider to beer in the United States. Add in the prohibition of alcohol, and the grain growers kept on producing food and feed, while the apple growers had to rebrand or cut down. Apples naturally ferment, so if you had apples that tasted bitter or too sour, you were implicitly intending to make alcohol. This spawned the commercial apple industry in terms of grocery store fruit, the apple a day kind of thing. This is when North America lost a large portion of the awesome cider apples that had come overseas with waves of English and French immigrants. But it was not, it seems, entirely due to that ridiculous amendment. There was also some impact of consumer choice, meaning people do actually enjoy beer. It's not just this alternative. It took a little more than 100 years to recover our footing in the market of beverages, and what we have most of is grocery store style fruit, selected for its crunch, its juiciness, its color, or its ability to store well in a cooler, its size, its branded name, and so on. American cider is being built from apples that were never intended to make wine, but here we are, and we are here in a big way.